Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to get started. Thank you all for being here. So today is our parent panel. Generally, for those of you that don't call in regularly, the Sport Connection we've been doing through COVID is hosting calls on Thursday for the sport community. But what those calls are is just people from the sport community that can call in. We let everybody speak, share ideas, share concerns, challenges through COVID, and it just gives people an opportunity to stay connected with the sport community, but also to sit back and listen to hear what other people are going through and what they're doing. So it's basically an idea sharing thing. But now that we've all done return to play, there's been so much work in the background done from the sport organizations, from the national level right down to the grassroots level. And I know some people that are on this call are part of those sport organizations, and kudos to you for plowing ahead. But I know that it can be very intimidating. But being so hyper-focused on the return to play, I feel like sometimes, and I know talking to parents, on the outside of this job that basically have kids that are engaged in sport. They're all at different levels all over. So I thought maybe there's an opportunity here to talk to some parents and see what kind of perspective they have. And it could be perspective is, they're maybe not worried about COVID, but they're concerned about maybe a second wave and another round of paying for something, a service that they don't get, right down to parents that have immunocompromised kids at home or family members at home. They're really concerned about the cohorts. They understand that there's guidelines there, but maybe need a little bit of extra confidence in order to engage by putting their kids back into the sport. So what we're going to do is, instead of a round table type of a format that we usually do on the Thursdays, we've invited 4 parents to come in and speak, and we have some questions that we put together that will help guide the conversation. But again, it's going to be a casual conversation. We're going to let it lead to where it leads. So we're going to be taking a look at the chat line. So if you aren't one of the parents that are speaking, and the parents will introduce themselves, they'll get to introduce themselves in a short bit once I stop talking here. But if you're not one of the parents, go ahead and put your questions into the chat. You can go directly to Paige or myself, or you can put in a question to everybody, and we'll try to get to your questions if you want to send them to the floor, certainly. So without further ado, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you parents. I have 4 parents that have come forward and giving their permission and willingness to share their perspective. I'm going to get you guys to introduce yourselves. I just need your first name, ages of your kids, kind of maybe what level of player, what sports they're playing, and basically that's it, and we can get started with some of the questions. Okay, so Paul, you're staring right back at me for some reason, and you're on the big screen here, so that must mean that you need to go first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Paul. I've got 2 kids. They are 5 and 8. Both of them are loving sports. My oldest son, he's crazy about soccer. We actually won my wife was talking with Paige, we won the contest there, so we got $100 off of our soccer fees whenever we get started
from
again.
Try It Day, awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat. We were set, both of them were supposed to play ball hockey this spring when everything really hit the fan. And yeah, so they're very involved. They play a lot of ball around the yard here, and that's kind of me. I'm very involved in sport in the city as well, with fastball, and myself running the mixed volleyball league. So that is going to be some fun here come fall.
No kidding, no kidding. A lot of hats. Thanks, Paul. Candace.
So I've got 2 kids as well, and their ages 7 and 11. And my son was involved in martial arts, and my daughter was dance. And then casually we'd be going downhill, skiing, or swimming throughout the winter season. So
Great.
That's our family.
Okay, cool. Amanda.
Sure. So my name's Amanda. I have 2 boys as well. They are 12 and 15. We started off in sort of the soccer, hockey type of stuff, and then boys both did Nancy Green Alpine, and then took some swimming lessons, and then both have become full-time competitive swimmers. It's a pretty big commitment pre-COVID. We're talking 20 hours a week for both of them, so 40, I guess. But and then a little bit of kayaking for my older son. He is in the youth development program with the Wapiti Kayaking Group. And yeah, so that's where we're at now.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. And Mona. Oh, just waiting to unmute herself here.
There we go. It's not working.
Yeah,
Hello?
you got you good, loud and clear here.
Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this. I have 3 children. They're all adult children, and we have probably for the last 20 some years have done every sport you can possibly think of. My youngest is currently in university, doing his 3rd year of student athlete in Thompson River University in Kamloops. Previous to that, he's played competitive volleyball, and he did soccer and baseball. And baseball is what we've been dedicated to for probably my last 20 years for sure. Many things from, parent volunteer to coach to board member, you name it. Congratulations, parents. You guys are on the road to a great lifetime of memories. No matter what level of sport your kids play, you're going to have some great memories to laugh back and put a lot of miles on, but they were worth every one of them. So hopefully I can, offer a little bit of advice or some knowledge or, just my own perspective. If there's any questions that you have, I'm hope I can help you out.
Perfect. And that's exactly what we are hoping for. We appreciate that, Mona. I just want to let everybody on the call. I know the parents know this, but everybody else, we are recording this call just for transparency. And what we're planning on doing is sharing it on our news feed for other people that want to maybe drop in and check out what other perspectives from parents are. So I'd like to start with a baseline. As far as when COVID hit, and since you guys are from recreation right to high performance sport here, and how was it for your family and for your children? And Mona, I'll start with you first.
Well, it was a big shock, to say the least. My son, his university regular season usually starts the 1st of March. And so we had just actually done some spring training down with his team down in Arizona and came back hoping that their season was going to go. So it was abruptly, like everybody else's sports, it was stopped right in its tracks. So their courses at university all went online and they weren't allowed to practice or be anywhere. So he was home by the end of March to finish his online classes here in Grande Prairie, but which usually he's not home until the end of May because that's when their season in university runs. They are very fortunate that providing they get the go-ahead to go back, they will be able to do their spring season this fall. Any players that may have graduated will be allowed to come back and play in the fall, even if they aren't attending courses at university. And again, they're the ones that no one is losing their eligibility for that season. So they will still have their full, if it's a 4-year program or a 5-year program, they will still get their full 5 years. But it was difficult for sure. Student athletes and universities, their funding is based on their season, and so some of their money had to be refunded, which leaves as many organization finds without income. And hopefully we will get back to play in August. We're just waiting to find out if their CCBC season will get to go. So it was a big shock, and he was home a lot earlier than he had planned, but I think that all things considering, he's making the best of the situation.
Right. Okay. Amanda, how did your kids deal with it, with the abrupt end to sports?
Yeah, it was a tough one. Hudson and I were on our way to Calgary for swim provincials, and we found out in Red Deer. So we had to, you know, stop and make a plan. What were we going to do? Are we going to still go to Calgary, or what for? And turn around and come back? And we did. We just turned around and drove back. So that was a tough, you know, because he was on his way there. Bags are packed. We're 2 hours from, you know, the hotel for the weekend to start. So that was kind of a tough turnaround for him in particular. Marshall's competition was going to be the next weekend. So everything was kind of up in the air at that point. Swim Alberta had just sort of canceled provincials. But very, very quickly, I think within a day or 2 days, they basically said that everything was canceled, no further competition. So Westerns was canceled, Nationals was canceled, and sort of everything in between us and right up to Olympic trials and Olympics was going to be canceled or postponed. So yeah, I mean, everybody was sort of in a different area, but it happened really, really quickly. And so there was some sad kids, but I think at the time they still were thinking that maybe there would be, you know, a chance somehow that something was going to turn around, or they were going to get back in the pool somehow. I don't think anybody kind of thought.
Right, a little bit of denial.
Like, everything was over. But within a couple weeks, I think that sort of turned around. Everyone was getting a little bit more information and stuff coming down from Swim Canada and Swim Alberta, and then within our own program was that, no, this was going to be around for a while. And yeah, props to Alex and our coaching team. They didn't wait very long. I want to say that the boys, it was maybe only a week or two where there was sort of nothing in this limbo, and there was immediately online Zoom where there was meetings between the squads, dry land training, and, you know, sometimes twice a day, every day all week, even on Saturdays. So you could come if you wanted to, or you could, you know, skip it if you weren't in the mood or what have you, but you could attend. And so that really like kind of shook them out, I think, of this like, well, it's over. They were still able to, you know, see their group and, you know, have some silly visits and get some workouts in. And so that, I think, really transitioned them really well into still moving, because everything was just stopped. No school, no swimming. And like I said, 20 hours a week is huge to go from that to zero. And so having that dry land incorporated really quickly, I think really helped a lot. And also in retention of especially some of the higher end teenage swimmers.
Right. Yes, I think you're right there. Thanks, Amanda. And
Yeah.
Candace, how about your kids?
Similar to Amanda, everything abruptly stopped. So there was quite that shock and denial at first. But like Amanda mentioned, there was that pivot immediately where to keep connected via Zoom. My kids got really good at logging into Zoom, and mostly the social connection of it, not so much the technical aspect of it, but they were able to continue with Zoom classes right through until June, and then figuring out what we were going to do to return to play. So that was the two main important ones. They were missing, however, more of the recreational, going to the swimming pool or going to Nighthawk or doing other outdoor activities and things that have always just been part of the norm of our winter season. So that was a bit of a transition through those couple of months.
Right, for sure. Okay, thanks, Candace. Paul?
For us, it was definitely a lot different than the other experiences, being, you know, it was our first time trying ball hockey for the kids. So, and they weren't already enrolled, or they were enrolled, but it hadn't started yet. So we had about a month, I believe it was starting about a month after things were shut down. So I know the kids were, they were bummed out. Mom and I, we were probably more disappointed than them. But really, it just come down to, you know, I'm the athletic one, so I had to do a lot more, play a little more sports with them here at home. We had some baseballs set up in the basement, which we didn't break any lights or anything this spring, and now we just kind of transition it all to outside. So they were definitely bummed out to not be able to try ball hockey, but they keep active with whatever they can do, and they're looking forward to when they can get back into it and meet some new people in the new sports.
Sometimes the kids are more resilient than the parents. For sure. So this gets us into return to play. I'm going to ask you about where you're at. Have your kids all returned to play? And if not, I've got some questions. And if so, I've got some questions from that. So Candice, we'll start from you. Have your kids returned to play?
For martial arts, yes. And for dance on a limited amount, but everything else they have not yet returned to play.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, so we are back in the pool. It's just 5 hours per week. This will be the end of our second week back in the pool. We were doing some group dryland previous for a couple weeks before the East Link was opened, but 2 weeks back in the pool. And then kayaking is a go as well. So that's just once a week though. And there's some physical distancing. You're in your individual kayak, that kind of thing. But yeah, so we are back at it.
Right. Okay. And I should have asked you, and Candice, I'll go back to you after Amanda. So how was the decision to put your kids back? Were you like closely watching the Piranhas? The organization, you just thought as soon as they roll it out, you're going to put your child in, or did you have any concerns, especially, going from 20 hours a week to 5 hours a week? People would assume that you're chomping at the bit, but that's not always the case. So what was your experience?
Yeah, Swim Canada came out really quite quickly with their return to play programming. It was very strict as far as like normally on a normal swim practice pre all this, it would be 4, 5, 6 kids a lane, depending on the day and who's there and whatever. And so now it's 1 swimmer per lane going one direction by yourself, that kind of thing. And so all of this had come through Swim Canada, and it was, it's just a different look at what swimming competitively was previous. Mm-hmm. So when you looked at it, I thought, jeepers, they're really, really physical distancing the swimmers. There's really very little kind of contact between everybody. And then Piranhas themselves, in conjunction with the East Link Center and Swim Alberta, then developed their own return to programs. And all of that information was all handed out ahead of time. We had Zoom meetings with the swimmers as themselves, as well as parents. Okay. So all the protocols were talked about. Everybody signed waivers with Swim Alberta, understanding that the rules, and the kids had to come in their swimsuits, there's no change rooms, all these kind of strict rules that was not something that we had to deal with before. Mm-hmm. And then the development of cohorts. So there's 3 separate cohorts right now, which again, even though you would sort of swim with your own group, you would be mixing and mingling on the pool deck constantly, even with, people just free swimming in the pool. And now that's not the case. So 1 cohort actually enters the pool, swims, and leaves the pool fully. It's sanitized, and then the second cohort comes in. So as we were going through this whole process and learning about what was going to be happening leading up until the first day, I felt very confident that everything that could be done was being done in the right way. So I wasn't super worried about it. You're concerned and you're reading all the information, trying to make sure that you're listening and following where it needs to be done. But once everything, I had a huge amount of confidence in the coaches and the East Link Center and what they're doing. So now that we've been doing it for 2 weeks, everything seems to be going very, very well. We haven't had any concerns that have popped up, and no real big tweaks to the program. This is just for July. So we'll see kind of what needs to be tweaked or changed from there on going into August, and then September would be our official start.
Mm-hmm. So they had a high level of communication with the parents prior to, a high level of knowledge around the return to play and protocols in place, which helped you feel confident in just putting the kids back in.
Yeah, it was shared with us. It's on our website. So, anyone
Right.
can go on the website and take a look at the return to programs. And so, right. It's accessible. There was no real questions. And even if you had some, like I said, there was Zoom meetings where you could, ask those questions and make sure that everything was going well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you felt you can ask questions as you went along as a parent.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even we had, something that I wouldn't have even considered ahead of time. One of my sons is lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
And again, not even an issue, maybe not feeling very great, didn't take an enzyme properly, miss a practice. Before this wouldn't have even been an issue.
Right.
But then of course now it's like, well, why isn't he here? What's the deal? And so even what happens when one kid misses, even that has been really, really clearly laid out, what the steps are, when you actually need to be COVID tested, when you need to self-isolate, when you need to, have a doctor's note to let you come back in. So, I mean, obviously for my son, it was fine. It was totally unrelated, but it was one of those things that I hadn't even considered ahead of time. But now it's something that it's a big conversation as to, well, why aren't you here?
Right.
But again, all of that information is available and clear for us.
Awesome. I love to hear that.
Mhm.
Candace, I'm going to go back to you here with the kids have gone back to sport, the same sport. Is it martial arts or is it and dance a little bit, right?
Yes,
Okay.
my son has gone back to martial arts, and what we've done from transitioning from Zoom classes, we felt comfortable enough with the organization that similar to what Amanda had said, it was clearly laid out in an email to parents what all of the new procedures and protocols were going to be in place.
Mm-hmm.
And we chose to do one-on-one sessions with an instructor. We don't yet feel comfortable to be in a group of other students just because we have immune compromised people within our family and within our close cohort group that we have. So we want to protect them as much as we can. So we felt that one-on-one, we would be comfortable with that. And, the following of the cleaning procedures and, all the details that they have spelled out, we have been comfortable to return there. And regarding dance, there was a small class of 5 students, my daughter being one, and 2 of the other students are within the cohort. And again, knowing ahead of time what all of the policies and procedures were going to be regarding the return to play and the cleaning and sanitation or sanitizing, I guess, of what they were going to be doing. And also in place what would happen, like Amanda mentioned, if somebody was sick or how they would deal with those certain circumstances. So I think just the communication between the organization and the parents, and also having an open line for that customer service aspect of it. If parents do have questions, how do they get that information? And is there a certain day or time where they can meet with instructors? Because you can't just, walk in to the building anymore and ask your questions. Everything has to be pre-planned and detailed. And I certainly want to respect the time of the instructors for what they have in place. So just being mindful of those kinds of things.
Right. So
go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so you're doing one-on-one training in the martial arts. What would it take for you as a parent to re-engage your child into that? Or is that not a possibility until there's a vaccine for you? Or is it something that the sport organizations can do? Because as sport organizations, we do anticipate that there's going to be a decrease in membership, right? It'll be good for us to know what does that mean for parents and how can we mitigate that gap, right? And so more parents can feel more comfortable sooner. What would that take? If it had anything to do with just completely you, that's one thing. That's perfect. But is there something?
Well, I found that the progress that my son had with martial arts, we actually found that it was more tailored to his needs than the progress he was making in a group class.
Mm-hmm.
Although we missed the social aspect, we were able to get the socialization in sport through baseball or through curling or through soccer. But we chose, just because of, holidays and work schedules, that the baseball season wasn't going to fit our family schedule this year due to all the changes. So we really get the socialization in baseball, and we're really missing that. Both my son and daughter play baseball, so we've had to forego baseball this season due to some circumstances, which is unfortunate. And we look forward to, reintegrating into baseball next year. And I'm confident that all of the details that they outline, we will be able to follow next year. But as for martial arts right now, we've actually found that the one-on-one is a better fit for our son.
Okay, that's
So
fair.
I'm not sure moving forward if we will reintegrate him into a group class. And I certainly would be hesitant to attend, a competition event where there are multiple cities and multiple clubs involved. We're certainly not ready to go there yet, just due to the state of, across Canada, and even, those, other people that we have no control over, their interactions. So it'll be quite some time, I think. I'm not certain it necessarily a vaccine or how that's going to happen yet. We're going to wait for it all to unfold, but we're cautious. We're really cautious right now.
Right, right. Thanks, Candace. Paul, we'll go to you.
So yeah, our kids, they haven't returned to play in anything, and it mostly comes down to what we were putting them into would have been done, and it hasn't. They had no return to play, like ball hockey. They canceled it for the year and try again next year. But I feel like if there was an option for us to go back into something, I kind of feel the same as Candace, that like with ball, the season's pretty much over anyways. I remember as a kid, like right now, it's provincials and westerns are already happening or have happened. So summer's here, and we're just going to take the time to enjoy it with family, and not have to worry about sports, not have to worry about germs and everything. My hope out of all this is that, even with school and sports, is that when kids are sick, that parents aren't sending them in to play. It's always frustrating as a coach. When I coach soccer, you'd see a kid coughing and snotting everywhere during a game. So I really hope that out of this, that parents will keep their kids home more often when they are sick, not just for COVID, just for the flu, because kids don't understand social distancing when they're on the bench and that. So that's my hopes. But we haven't returned to play just because there was nothing that we were really putting our kids into right now.
Mm-hmm. Paul, come September, once you do have the opportunity for return to play, what kind of things will make you feel comfortable, or do you already just have a comfort level for letting your kids re-engage with sport?
I think it'll come down to knowing that the coaches, are going to be allowed to speak to the parents if their kid shows up sick, and that whatever league will be able to back those coaches and say, like, if you have to tell that kid not to come onto the diamond or onto the soccer pitch, and that they have this back in that respect. Other than that, it's, we'll see how the second wave and everything happens. It's always tough being in Grande Prairie because we're in such a shielded bubble here compared to the rest of Alberta and the world. So we've been very fortunate for the low counts, and even with people getting more comfortable here, we're still maintaining. But I've always said that if it does break out here, it's really going to go like wildfire, just because the attitude we have is, we're a very friendly group of people here in Grande Prairie, and we're so shielded that we could see things expand really quickly, but hopefully so far so good.
Yeah, those are some interesting comments, definitely. Mona, can you share with us?
Well, my son has returned to play. Again, being 21, I kind of have to trust his judgment.
Yeah.
He's had to get really creative in working out and staying in shape and preparing for his upcoming season, because his coach has said, when you get back, you guys got to be game ready because our season's starting right away. So, I got a pitching mound in my backyard. I've got a gym in my garage, and he's got a few other college students here in Grande Prairie that they meet up, 4 or 5 times a week and throw the ball around and do some pitching. And I'm really trusting that they. I definitely I know he is being very aware and very cautious about social distancing. That he has gone out to play on the wheat belt team for the Rycroft Rage. Again, I agree with Paul. We're very fortunate that geographically we are isolated and our cases have stayed very low. My concern, I guess, when he returns back to Kamloops, much like everyone else here has said. I don't know what the other people have been doing. I do know that sadly, we're 35 and younger, and especially college university students are certainly not understanding the social distancing quite as greatly as some of the rest of us, if you have small children or immune compromised. But I'm going to cross my fingers that they're smart enough. They were a pretty wise group. They had an opportunity to head down into Seattle right when Seattle was the hotbed back at the end of February. And as a team, the majority of the players got together and just said, we don't think we should go. They were not popular with their coach, I'm going to say, because they kind of took a stand, but I was really proud of them. And like most of them had said, it wasn't that they were worried about being sick or being the contact. It was what they would be bringing back into Kamloops, where the population is a lot of seniors, a university of 20,000 people. So I think that, in a sense, gives me a little bit of hope that, they're going to be smart enough about what they're doing as university players. I know Baseball Alberta has huge protocols in place and have really done a great job of getting the documentation and the protocols in place for everyone to follow. And I have the utmost respect for the association here in Grande Prairie, the AAA that I'm involved with, in how they are moving forward and how they're looking at it. And again, looking at, they don't want to spread it from community to community, even in our zone, if it were to outbreak. So like I said, I think that I'm at a different perspective. I certainly respect anyone who chooses to keep their kids out of sports. And I think as the fall comes along, the competitive sports going, like Candace had said, going out and competing, and Amanda said, in other areas in the province where it is still growing. I really do hope that our many local community sports will take into consideration what they could be bringing back, not so much what their kids are going to be running into when they get there. I think that everybody's very aware that where this disease goes at this point is unknown, and school getting back and all of that included. So I do think that we have to be cautious, but I do know that the social aspect and the mental health part, that is great for our kids and our parents as well. Because
that's part of
like everyone else, we're missing our sport friends too.
Yeah.
I think that we have to be very cautiously optimistic that we can go forward, but be very aware that we may have to go backwards too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if we do go backwards, what do we need to see? What do we want? So feeling safe and moving forward is one thing, because I know you referred to Baseball Alberta's return to play guidelines, and we are currently, because we are really just in the midst of it, in the beginning of phase 2 still, right, within a month.
Right.
So we're feeling more and more confident and comfortable. So let's say as wave 2 does hit, what do you think, or as a parent, what do you want to see from the sport organizations in order for you to feel confident long term and to stay with it?
I think that as parents, we have to respect that the decisions that these organizations make is certainly going to have to be followed by everyone, and they have to support them. That they have to be, they're looking at a much bigger group and a bigger community than what would directly affect myself or you. I think that they have done a fantastic job, and even Amanda had said with the swimming organization here in Grande Prairie has certainly done a really good job of having that in place, that if it were to come back, I think that shutting it down quickly and kind of reevaluating is going to be key to keeping the spread at a minimal, I think.
Right, I agree. So this is for all 4 parents. Would you feel comfortable right now, being that the protocols are being strictly adhered to, and hopefully the sport organizations are keeping a gold standard, and we hear that the more communication at this point, the better for the parents, and there needs to be an open line between the parents and the sport organization. So about like self-regulation. So would you as a parent feel comfortable in um, I guess reporting? I don't like saying that. I think that's a negative word, but uh, communicating a concern if you saw somebody that was starting to become lax within their protocol following, because that's naturally what happens with human beings. So what happens is you and Paul have already alluded to, Mona, is that people are getting quite comfortable up here because we have been so fortunate. So what can we do as parents, and what would you be willing to do as a parent? Would you need to do that in a confidential way, or would you be able to say, hey, you know what, you guys need to be standing six feet apart, or you guys maybe should be doing it this way versus that way?
I personally, I think that confidentially, it would be probably the easiest, but I do think that the protocol is set in place and it's up to the board to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that everyone would take it upon themselves to see the severity of it and remind them. Maybe it's a gentle reminder every day before practice until it becomes second nature. I want to hope that people would take it upon themselves to monitor their own health and not want to infect anyone else. But I do think that it's something that the board would have to have a strong stance on as well.
Mm-hmm. What about the rest of you?
Well, I think that the confidential tip line would certainly be helpful, a direct line to the organization, but I can see that being a lot of extra work for them to set that up. But at the same time, to report on, what you're seeing happen, it being lax, also can blacklist you, I guess, to a certain extent. Then you're going to be seen as the parent trying to call out the organization, and everyone else just wants to have fun and have a good time. But if you're the one who's trying to uphold those rules, generally it doesn't return very favorably to you. So I feel I would probably be on that strict side of things. If I see that the rules are designated as A, B, and C, and they're being, really lax in it, it could affect everybody in the group. And I certainly would speak up and say something. But like Paul had mentioned, you hope that the coaches are going to be backed up if they're the ones who have to be the enforcers by whatever board, or if it is a private business. I mean, at the end of the day, that private business, if they aren't following the rules, then it affects their clients and their customers. And you're always wanting to grow your business, and if you're not getting the positive feedback and it turns into negative feedback really quickly, you're not going to be able to grow your business. So you have to be able to mitigate that and demonstrate to your clients or to the sport athletes and their parents that you are trying to protect and trying to keep the risk low. But that's going to look different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, it just has to be that communication. If something does happen and something gets out of hand, then they need to be able to contact all of their clients or all of their athletes right away and say, hey, we know this happened. We're sorry that you saw that this happened. This is what we're trying to do to take care of it. For me, I have no problem with, we all learn from our mistakes and grow from our mistakes, but we also have to be open and honest and transparent about that. Okay, here's what we're doing to fix that. If something happened, you saw something, please let us know, and we'll try and correct it and make it right. And that's how we all grow together and hold each other accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Paul or Amanda, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to what I said about with the kids being sick. That's where I guess my biggest concern would be over being able to say something. If you talk about, people, the parents in the stands, not social distancing, and you go to rat them out, for lack of better words, you say something, but you don't know if, if they're part
They're
of their
part of the
cohorts.
same cohort, exactly.
Yeah, like our neighbors, each side of us, we're constantly together, and that's kind of, we made that plan early on that, you know, we're going to be a cohort. So you don't know. And if you think about it, your kids are out on the soccer pitch bumping into each other and touching each other as they're fighting for the ball. And if two parents are next to each other in the stands, how is that different than the kids being down there on the floor together? So that's a tough spot to factor in there. But you know what, it's the sick kids. If kids are sniveling or anything, they just shouldn't be there, and it definitely needs to be brought up. You know, you can say it depends on the type of person you are. I think there should be an option to go right to the league and mention it. And some people are fine just confronting someone saying, hey, your kid seems a little sick and protocol says you need to stay home. So.
And I know, and I'll speak to what Marvin says on the side there. I do know that with the Declaration of Knowledge that's being signed, it does say in a lot of the return to play guidelines that you know, people will be warned, but ultimately there's a progressive, or not even a progressive discipline, but they're have the chance of being asked to leave immediately, and they do sign that before they play. Marvin Dobish is with the Sport, Physical Activity and Recreation Department of the Government of Alberta, and he says compliance is our major concern right now across the province in every sport at all levels. Martin, do you want to speak to that very quickly?
Sure, Karna, thanks a lot. Yeah, it's been great to listen to the perspectives of all the parents on the calls today. And I'm a parent as well of two post-secondary athletes in the sport of basketball, one going into his third year of university and one going into his fifth year of college. And certainly there's a lot of uncertainty in our household right now. We know that the Alberta Colleges Athletic Conference has made the decision that there'll be no fall sports, and that's basketball being both the fall and winter semester, that it's been pushed back already to the winter semester. And there's probably a pretty good chance that there will not be a season at all this coming year. University sport, they made some fairly rash decisions already, and you know, in all likelihood, we probably will not see a university season this year as well. They had already made the decision, and Mona will know this, that there would be no travel interprovincially for the coming season for sport in the Canada West Conference. So they've already, you know, indicated that if there is any competition, it'll take place within the province as itself. So. Having said that, yeah, so I work with the provincial government in sport, physical activity and recreation, and we've been working really closely with Alberta Health Services in the development of all of the return to play guidelines for sport and recreation and physical activity across the province. So we're working now really closely with the provincial sport organizations in the development of their return to sport guidelines, and it's really encouraging to hear all of you speak and refer to those guidelines that have been developed by either the respective provincial sport organizations, or in Amanda's case, she talked a lot about the work that Swim Canada has done. So I'm really happy to hear that this information is filtering down, you know, all the way to the local level, and that you as parents, you know, have been really well informed by your respective local sport organizations. So congratulations to all of you for, you know, taking the time and the interest and you know, just being fully aware of all of the various guidelines and protocols. So yeah, my comment around compliance. So certainly, you know, as sport has returned, and Blake Cosgrove, who's also on the line with Hockey Alberta, will know that we certainly have some concerns right now with a number of different organizations or individuals or facilities that are reopening or returning to sport and just not complying fully with all of the guidelines that have been developed by Alberta Health Services, as well as, you know, our branch as well. So that's one of our major concerns. We certainly do not want to see an outbreak within sport, you know, that happens across the province. And, you know, if an outbreak, then, you know, that could potentially lead to, you know, consequences with us having to dial it back and going back into some sort of a lockdown. So it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that if you see, or if you're aware of any organizations, you know, by all means, I think, you know, it's it's within your right to let your local organization know, or if you have connections with a provincial organization, let them know that things are happening that you don't think are right, so that somebody can look at them. So we're certainly have been made aware of a number of circumstances with various sports across the province over the last couple of weeks since we've really got back up and running. And we're reporting those incidences to Alberta Health Services, and then it's up for them to conduct some investigation and determine what will happen next, if in fact anything does happen. So that's kind of where we're at right now, Karna.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would like to say that, how awful would it be if, because none of this is tried with the cohorts, and sport and rec isn't the only sector that has cohorts, right? And I sure don't want to see, something catching fire through sport and recreation, because it would be a shame to kind of lead in that area and be seen, as, something that's potentially, worse than it is, right? So we just want to do the best we can with that.
Yeah, for sure. Just to add, I think one of the things that I would mention is that, you as parents should probably be really careful in terms of how many sport cohorts you're looking at putting your children in, as we start to look at getting into the fall. Right now, our recommendation is that if your sport is going with cohorts, that you probably only should be looking at one sport at a time at this point in time to really limit and mitigate that risk.
Mm-hmm.
If sport in the case, I think it was Amanda indicated that her kids are doing swimming and kayaking. You've got two different scenarios there. You've got one sport, swimming, that's doing cohorting, but you've got kayaking, which can pretty much, accomplish their sport, utilizing physical distancing. So I think in that situation, you're okay. But, once we see what happens with the announcement with Alberta Education and what's going to happen if kids, in fact, will be going back to the classroom in person, or if there'll be some sort of various formats, then again, then your kids are being exposed to more cohorts potentially when they go back to school. So, what we want to try to do is we want to try to mitigate and to limit ourselves to as much exposure as possible. So those are just a couple of other points that I thought I would share with the group.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. Thank you, Marvin. And also to mention between the cohorts, if your children are switching cohorts for whatever reason that may be, you lose confidence maybe in one sport and decide to pull your kid and put them in another sport, you're asked to not isolate, but wait 14 days before you put your child into the next sport. So it doesn't matter if you go and get a COVID test. There's been a lot of questions around that, unfortunately, because of the type of virus that it is, that it can lay dormant or be asymptomatic. So 14 days is what's asked between if you're switching from one sport cohort to the next. That's correct, hey Marvin?
Yeah, that's correct, for sure. We want a period of 2 weeks right now, and that's through stage 2. So
that's right.
We're anticipating, potentially an announcement coming within the next few weeks, kind of maybe around, the time that the Alberta Education announcement is coming around August 1st, of whether or not, in fact, we'll move into a stage 3 or not. But who knows right now? We're starting to see case numbers grow a little bit across the province. We just saw this morning an outbreak was announced in a Hutterite colony south of Calgary, for example. So, we're starting to see the numbers creep up a little bit. So, it'll be kind of really interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, and whether or not, in fact, we can move into a stage 3 or not. There has been some discussion about potentially, increasing those cohort sizes from 50 to a larger number potentially. But again, that remains to be seen. So we're just waiting, for some additional direction from Alberta Health Services. Dr. Hinshaw was away last week, and I know that she's pretty inundated right now with this whole NHL piece and Edmonton being a hub city and dealing with that. If you've been watching the news, she's been doing a lot of interviews and trying to explain how that whole situation is going to work. So, we certainly can learn a lot by any of the professional sport organizations that are coming back. We saw, for example, last night, the NASCAR race in Bristol, Tennessee, which had, about 20,000 fans. So what's going to happen there now? Will we see an outbreak, that's related to that? So many things that we're kind of observing and trying to keep on top of. And I know Karna and I were on a a webinar earlier this morning about sport event insurance and all of the ramifications around that. So just, it's a lot of information to try to be able to understand at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, for parents with children, I mean, in sport, as one of you alluded to, that it's almost just as important as for the parent as it for the kids, as we all know. But you know, like, you can do it by keeping it small. So even if after August 1st they go from 50 to whatever number they do decide, you know, there are going to be other sports, and I know Athletics Alberta has, even though the cohorts of 50, their clubs, they're sanctioned clubs, they're only allowing smaller numbers than that. So it does happen out there. And Candace, you alluded to having your child in one-on-one versus in a group setting. So there will be certainly options, but I think on both ends, whether you're a sport organization or just a parent that is helping your child engage in sport in the community, there's a level of, there's a gold standard that we should all be aiming for. In saying that, I know that one of the parents, I know that there are a lot of people that are quite flippant about COVID and don't even really believe in, you know, the dangers of COVID. And you're obviously going to come up with things like there. And that's why it becomes important to create those protocols and follow those protocols, whether you're a parent or the sport organization, so that there's an expected level, no matter where on the spectrum your belief lies. So in saying that, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know that I know the commitment of parents in sport, and I know that you guys are all supportive for your children in the community, and I love that you engage your children in sport. Does anybody else want to make any comments? Any questions that I left out? I haven't looked at my page in a while.
I'm just curious, Marvin, thank you for being here. I'm curious, I think one of my concerns right now would be, and again, I'm going to put on my other hat with AAA baseball here in Grande Prairie. We're not a Grande Prairie team, we're a Zone 8 team, so we're all of Northeast, and we've been very cautious in returning to play and or train, just because we have about 11 communities in the Northeast zone that would come together. So we're being very cautious about reintroducing each other and cohorts, because we take in so many communities. And I think that's my concern right now with the back to school thing, is we have, like you said, students will be with their classmates, then students will be in the gym, or they'll be at the hockey rink with other teams. I think that's the other part that I think concerns me more so, especially for you guys. I mean, I work in a school, but you guys with small children, is that opens up the opportunity for the spread, just because we have cohorts that we have no control of, because that's who we go to school with, or that's who we've been put on a team with. That's, you know, who's the team that we're playing. And I think that Alberta Health, and like I said, I think the governing sports bodies for the ones that I'm in communication with, have done a really good job. And I'm sure everyone is just as fearful moving forward as what I am for my AAA players, as university players as well. Because again, we don't know where the university players are coming from, and at this point have not been told that we need to self-isolate when they return to school. They are back in time to do that. But you know, that I think the cohorts and the numbers is probably the toughest step to make from here on in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he makes some really good points, Mona. And I guess, you know, when you mentioned earlier about your son playing in the Wheat Belt Baseball League, and, you know, I'm familiar with that, having, you know, growing up in the Peace Country, you know, that's a pretty big league with, you know, teams from all over the Peace Country. And certainly, you know, we want to try to keep, you know, our sports as much localized as possible. But we understand certainly in some cases that who do you play, or who do you train with when you're in a region like the Peace Country, and you just don't have, you know, the same opportunities that you might have in a larger urban center. So, you know, there was a lot of questions that came out early about that. You know, cohorts and travel has been the two biggest ones that we've been dealing with. And a few weeks ago, the Alberta Health Services, although they haven't made this document public on the Alberta Biz Connect site, they basically are indicating that the sports should try to stay within the Alberta Health Services 5 regional zones. Well, those 5 regional zones are a lot larger than the 8 kind of, you know, regular sport zones, which we are used to. And I see Amanda smiling because she knows that, you know, we're used to, you know, the Alberta Summer Games model or the Alberta Schools Athletic Association models in which we try to keep, you know, our sports, you know, within those zones. So we've still got some work to do in that area. And you know, we've been trying to give the advice to the provincial organizations to pass on to their local, you know, sport organizations and membership. Try to keep it as regionalized as possible. Try to stay within your, you know, your community or within your own municipality if at all possible. Again, so we don't have people traveling all over the province, you know, training or competing at this point in time. And so, you know, having said that, you know, tournament play, there is no tournament play right now that's being, you know, approved right now, even though we know, you know, that there are some tournaments that are taking place in some sports. For example, golf has been hosting championships, and we're dealing with that situation right now where you've seen, you know, certain slow pitch tournaments that have taken place, for example. That's not actually what should be happening right now. So that's what, you know, comes back to my, you know, comment about compliance. You know, if you're aware of anything, Karna, up in the Northwest that, you know, needs to be flagged, then we certainly want to hear about those types of things. So there's a lot of people to deal with right now, for sure.
And that was a question that was brought to us, was that although we have 20 players from the Northeast zone, from 11 different communities, you know, outside of Grande Prairie and including the county of Grande Prairie, you know, that was a question that was asked, well, is Edmonton, and this is, you know, just as a hypothetical, is the St. Albert or the Sherwood Park teams, you know, they have far more kids within their region than what we have. How are they working with this through all of this too? And so I think everybody is doing the best that they can possibly do. And I certainly hope that it doesn't explode and backfire on any of us. But I think that, you know, even like I said, the Wheat Belt is not official games. They're having a few exhibition things, but you know, very select number of, you know, they're not taking their whole team. It's just the players that are going to play that night are the ones that are there, and the rest are staying home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's interesting one for the parents too, because August 1st is only 2 weeks away. For those parents that have your kids in sport right now, what does that mean if all of a sudden you can play Fort St. John team? What does that mean for you as a parent? Does it change things? Because you trust here that you trust your sport organization because they've been transparent, the communication's been great. But once you open that up, things change. So if your sport organization, I mean, it could be cohorts, who knows what's going to happen August 1st, but what does that mean for you, especially for the people in competitive, right, with kids that are highly motivated and highly competitive? It's a whole different thing for parents with younger children that can play, you know, neighborhood pickup games, which, you know, within the cohort, right? A different scenario entirely. Anybody want to talk about that or concerned about that? Amanda?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the information that I have coming down through Swim Alberta specifically in regards to what meets would look like, because swimmers, I mean, the actual race itself is pretty isolated. You're not necessarily touching anybody when you're actually in your swim race itself. It's the pool deck that's the problem. So marshalling areas or bag areas, team group areas, and it's, you know, in Grande Prairie, there can be 250 swimmers on the pool deck, and Edmonton and Calgary can be 600 swimmers on the pool deck. That's not counting people up in the stands watching. So, of course, right now it's not even our whole competitive group that's able to swim. So we're looking at, there's only about 30 to 35 swimmers who are divided into 3 cohorts, and no parents were not even allowed in the building. So it's pretty strict compared to, you know, what it used to be. But the information coming down is even a push to virtual swim meets where you would sign up to basically host your own swim meet in your own pool with your own cohort. And then your times would then sort of be sent into a group database so that you're technically swimming against, you know, your competitor in Edmonton. However, they're swimming in their pool and we're swimming in our pool. And of course, you know, with the concerns that are happening now, that does sort of do a little bit of relief for us that, you know, we're not having to necessarily worry about, well, how do you even manage a swim meet with 250 swimmers at it and try to keep everybody separate. It's just not possible the way pools are built. But at the same time, there is something about racing right next to your competitor that you're going to lose. I mean, you have your own teammates to race against, so there is some that's there, but I mean, there's just that loss of having that, you know, I'm going to race against you and we'll see who wins. So, you know, what that looks like, nothing has really been confirmed. As of right now, it's just not something that anyone is really kind of banking on, that there'll be swim meets. Certainly not. Normally, like our first swim meet would be in October, and that seems very unlikely. So, I mean, you know, but as far as us meeting as a small cohort with a small group of, you know, parents or officials to run our own sort of time trial based swim meet and then put those times into a database seems like something that could work, but would certainly need a lot of conversations and planning around how that would actually work with, you know, there's still just more people on deck. So, you know, what a swim meet looks like, I'm not 100% sure yet. So we're just working on being in the water, getting the kids moving again right now.
Yeah. Great.
I wanted to follow up with that, just say that, you know, just to keep with the kids moving and similar to what Paul had said, doing a lot more backyard activities and family activities. We're trying to keep our fitness levels up and we're trying some new things. We are going golfing as a family and we've tried a lot of Zoom or Instagram classes just to keep our physical health and fitness up, but it's also opened up some new activities that we've been able to try. And same with Karna, when the Sport Connection hosted Try It Day, to see all those videos online from a lot of our local sports organizations, it was great because some of those facilities we hadn't been in before, or we hadn't tried a level of those classes that they offered. So I'm really hoping that a number of parents and kids are able to cross-train or try some new activities that they've never tried before that might help boost their fitness and their technical skills, so that when they do decide on one sport, if you know, we need to decide on one sport for the fall or what that looks like, or as they progress into trying other sports, maybe that overall full body fitness will help all of our kids and our families as they grow older. Not so much that they focus on missing out on things, it's just trying to take advantage of the time that we have right now, do what we can with what we have. And I'm really pleased to hear that there are, you know, at a provincial level and at that regional level, that we have organizations like the Sport Council. And thank you so much for Marvin for coming online and filling us in on those the information that he has, because I think that is really super important to share with the provincial levels, and that it does come down into the grassroots level of sport, because you know, there's so many questions and there's a lot of uncertainty, but I am still positively optimistic that we can move forward and we're going to be able to keep our kids active and having fun in sports organizations. And this will also make our kids a little more resilient, so that when they get to the level where they become the coaches and they are the ones volunteering for these big events, that they have a little more resiliency under their belt, that they know that how they can, you know, improve the sports organizations and lend to our community. So I'm pleased to see we're moving forward. We're going to get there. I know we will.
Totally. Yeah, it's definitely, actually, I think overall, a lot of positives will come out of it, right? Like that multi-sport aspect, you know, those kids, I know that there's several parents that wish that they would have put their kids in more than one sport their entire lives after they, you know, they stop playing at 13 because they're just burnt out. So I think there's definitely going to be some silver linings. I agree. And some crossover with sport, just out of you four, Manda, and Mona, I know that your kids are still really engaged because they're competitive, and Candace, you already alluded to this, but the crossover sport will be interesting to see, hey? Kids doing different sports, kids that got pulled out of, let's say if they're training for, my girlfriend has a kid that competes in gymnastics, and all of a sudden things have changed in 3 months and she's taking on a different direction entirely. And I bet you we'll see that more and more in sport through COVID. So anybody seeing that out there?
I've been really fortunate. My son has done just about every sport there is possible through school, and anything that he was interested in, he was going to go and do his best. And I really think that when he had to narrow down from 5 sports to 3 to 2 to 1, were probably Saturdays for me than they were for him, because there was a group of parents that I was hardly going to get to see enough of.
Yeah, fair enough.
But now at the age that he is, he also, he's playing the game that he loves, but he has so many sports under his belt that he can go back into and play at any level, mostly, of course, because he is, 21, a little less competitive. I say that tongue in cheek because I don't think he does anything not competitive, but, it's been great. And I really, for our family, he tried everything, and he finished the season out. If he loved it, he went back. If he didn't, he picked something different. So hence we did everything possible, with the exception of swimming. He sinks. And kayaking, I'm sure if he got in the water, he'd have a great time. But definitely, to the parents whose kids are little, if they show an interest, let them run with it, at least the season. Finish the season, even if they decide they don't like it halfway through. Finish the season and pick a new one next time. And those well-rounded multi-sport athletes, the things that they gain from it, and the friends and the memories are second to none. You can't go back and redo it.
That's right. I couldn't agree with you more. So I see that I've taken you guys 10 minutes after what I promised I would take you, but I sincerely appreciate you guys coming on to this call. We're going to, like I say, be sharing it with the rest of the community. I think the perspective from parents goes a long way to helping sport organizations understanding how they can communicate with parents, but also for other parents to understand that there's different perspectives out there, and not one of them is wrong. It's just a different perspective. So thank you guys. Thank you everybody that called in today. I really appreciate it. Marvin, as always, you're a real advocate for the North, and we appreciate you jumping in these calls every once in a while. So thank you, everyone.